Hey everybody, it's John, and we're back with I think episode 5 of Comic Book Club. And during this first few episodes, I've been kind of recounting my trip to go see my friend in North Carolina and the comic shops I stopped at along the way. I started up in Indiana, and then I stopped in Lexington, Kentucky, and then in Powell, Tennessee before I had my stop for that night. And then I continued on to North Carolina, and we stopped at a couple places in Nashville. And also, while we were there, we also stopped at some toy stores too. We stopped at Toy Federation. Now, if you guys watch them on YouTube, they're pretty popular. And one of the things I was looking for, I was hoping to find when I was there, was a 1994 Toy Biz Galactus. I think it's a 14-inch figure, not to be confused with the Marvel Legends Build-A-Figure Galactus. Actually, we had that when those first came out. My brother and I, we were both in high school, and we decided just to buy all the figures and build Galactus ourselves, and it was pretty fun. But I wanted to get to the 1994 version, but they didn't have it. But it was still fun to stay at Toy Federation. I'll put some pictures up of that. But on the way back up, there's another toy shop that was in Lexington, and I said, you know what, I'll try that out, just see if I can find that there. So I went there, and it was called Toy Headquarters in Lexington, Kentucky. If you look them up on Google Maps, you'll see that they'll have an outdated address on there. So I would tell you to look for Toy Headquarters on Facebook and see that they have a new address, and that's how you can find it. And I'll put up some pictures now from that. And it's a pretty cool store. And I walked all the way around. I think I spent about almost an hour and a half there just like looking at everything there. But again, they didn't have the Galactus I was looking for, but they did have comics. I didn't plan on this one to be a comic stop, but it became a comic stop pretty quickly. And I think I might have got more comics here than in any of the other stores. So we'll go through that right now. Okay, so at Toy Headquarters, I ended up getting some comics, and the first ones that I just happened to see were the ones that probably were the most important for me, and not only as a buyer of comics, but as a buyer of anything, and that was Masters of the Universe. I am a huge Masters of the Universe fan. I have been ever since I was a kid, and this is a comic book run that not only do I love, but it's the comics of that run that are pretty rare to find, and actually have jumped up in price, especially if you're just looking on eBay listings. This is the run that was done by Val Staples and Emiliano Santa Lucia, and these were the guys from He-Man.org basically, who were doing the comics for the 2000X run, and they had a volume 1 and a volume 2 of that run that were fantastic. And then there was the Rise of the Snake Men run, which was pretty much a straight adaptation of the cartoon. And then the volume 3. And those two, the Rise of the Snake Men run and the volume 3, the prices are a little harder to find on the secondary market. And so they've been kind of tough for me to complete. Well, I found a lot more of that run. So I got number 4. This is a volume 3, number 4, number 6. And then this is the Power of Fear Dream Halloween special. It was to help, I don't know if it was an AIDS benefit. It was some kind of benefit like that. And so this is that comic. And then I found all 3 of the Rise of the Snake Men. 1, 2, and 3. So now I have almost completed the 2000X run, which kind of makes me a little sad to see that we're almost there. I think there's just 2 more I need, 7 and 8. And that'll be it. It'll be great to have like this, in my opinion, as a fan of comic books and a fan of He-Man. If you're looking for the definitive He-Man comic book run, it's this run by Val and everyone at MV Creations. Fantastic stuff. So these were great to find. And these were probably the most expensive comics I got there too. They were anywhere from $4 to $6, especially the Dream Halloween. That was a bit pricier, but it was worth it. And once I grabbed that, we were off to the races. It's like, all right, we're getting comics. So the next comics that I found were in the DC section. I mentioned earlier that I was rebuilding my Guy Gardner collection. Guy Gardner number 8. We have Lobo. And Lobo and Guy are actually pretty close. The Guy Gardner solo story begins with a 3-part mini-series where he enlists Lobo to kind of help him get Sinestro's ring so he can be a ring slinger again. And they just kind of become off again, on again, enemies, frenemies throughout the series. So this is number 8. And then I also mentioned that I was working on getting the single issues from Panic in the Sky. So I have Panic in the Sky, the prologue, and then Fifth Strike. This is a nice homage cover to Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then this is just continuing on this run of Superman era. We got Lex 2 and Supergirl protecting him. I really love this time of Superman. It's really weird. We have the Matrix Supergirl. We have Lex Luthor cloned into a younger body, at first pretending to be his Australian son. He's got the orange ponytail. He's got the Amish beard. It's just so crazy, but I love it. It's so comic booky. So grab that. And then the rest of everything was pretty much Marvel. We'll start with the X books. So we have Cable number 5. And then I mentioned on the last episode, I believe, that I had found a Fathers and Sons. I think it was part 2. Here at this store, I found part 1 and part 3. So I think it's a 3-part story. So I have the entire story here now of Cable, Cyclops, and Jean. Of course, Sinister's involved too. And then speaking of Cyclops and Jean, Scott and Jean, I had previously found a Cyclops and Phoenix number 1 at my local comic shop when I was comic book buying. Here I was able to find 2, 3, and 4. So I have that whole series too. So it's amazing to me how quickly I've been able to kind of complete a lot of runs and put some stories together. And I have quite the backlog of things just to sit down and read now that I finally have them collected. It's so fun. That's my favorite thing I think about being a comic book buyer, is not only the hunting and the finding, but when you get it and it's like, all right, and, you finally get, it's kind of almost like an Indiana Jones thing. You've collected all the little bits, all the little trinkets, all the little bits of mystery, and you can put it together and unravel it and see what you're supposed to do. This is how you get to the Cup of Christ for Last Crusade, stuff like that. So I have put some great stories together to read. Moving on from the X books, we'll go to Spider-Man. I'm not typically a huge Spider-Man buyer, and I blame that on Comixology. For all of you digital comics fans, Comixology was a great store, which eventually merged with Amazon, and that's great because I didn't lose my library. But what stinks is Comixology used to have those huge sales all the time where you basically get things almost for free, and sometimes you actually did get them for free. And I have almost the entire early, like from beginning to the 80s Amazing Spider-Man run. So I don't typically pick up a lot of Spider-Man comics, but I guess the more that I'm out buying, the more it's going to happen. So this is Amazing Spider-Man number 387. We got Vulture. And then this is from the Round Robin Psychic's Revenge storyline, which interests me because if you've been paying attention, I'm a New Warriors guy. So this is Psychic's Revenge Part 4 and Part 2. And then Web of Spider-Man, we got Gambit and Black Cat. And this one kind of picks up right after one of my childhood Spider-Man series that I had, that I actually put together and was able to read, but I had a couple of the issues as a kid. Pursuit, where he faces off with Chameleon, when Chameleon's trying to get revenge for the death of Kraven the Hunter, who we find out they were pretty close. I don't know if they're necessarily brothers, but they had like a close kind of bond, at least the way Chameleon saw it. So he was out to get revenge. Right after that, Web of Spider-Man goes off with this mini-series, or this new story direction that brings in Gambit and Black Cat, called Live and Let Die. And then I saw this, like, I need to check this out. Web of Spider-Man with Doc Ock. This is Ock Triumphant. This is number 5, so I'm assuming Web of Spider-Man started off with this Doc Ock, and this is maybe towards the end of the arc, maybe the penultimate chapter. But it looked really cool. And then Marvel Milestone Edition Amazing Spider-Man number 1. So this isn't the first Spider-Man story. That was in Amazing Fantasy, I believe. But this is from his first book. And if you look at it, you can tell it's not in the best condition. Big tear here, lots of bends and stuff. But this is really nostalgic for me because these Marvel Milestones came out when I was younger, and I used to see them all the time in ads. Like, oh, how cool would that be to have that? If I can read Spider-Man number 1 or read X-Men number 1. All these different Marvel Milestone editions. So I just saw it, and even though it's in kind of not the best condition. I'm like, I gotta get that, at least for, 7-year-old John. So that's cool to have. Moving on, some more Marvel. We have the Mighty Thor, number 401, with Loki. And then number 413. And then when I was at Morgan's Comics, I believe, I had found that Marvel Comics Presents that had Hawkeye on it. This is the very next issue. I think that was 159, so this is 160. So we have Hawkeye, but it's continuing that new Warrior storyline. But we also have Mace and Vengeance. And then Fantastic Four, number 7. But this is based off the animated series. It's kind of like there was X-Men Adventures, Batman Adventures, all the comics based off the cartoon. I didn't realize Fantastic Four had one that was based off the cartoon, but I mean, it makes sense. But I just had never saw them as a kid. I never ran into them as a collector at my different points of comic book collecting. So just seeing that, I'm like, well, that's cool. I'm going to check this out. So this is number 7 from the Marvel Action Hour. It's obviously based off the Skrull story. And then this is an Infinity War crossover. I mentioned in one of the other episodes how I want to get all those different crossovers. So this is number 368. And also coming back to this, I especially want to get these crossovers for Fantastic Four, because if you just read Infinity War, Reed is is he a Skrull, or he's a bad guy? He's one of the Magus's doppelgangers. But then all of a sudden at the end he's not. And if you just read the Infinity War, you never know what happened there. So I'm hoping, maybe not in this one, but maybe it's in one of the following Fantastic Four ones. We'll see. How do we get original Reed back? That'd be great to know. And then I've also talked about how I'm collecting these annuals. So this was the Marvel Annual Fantastic Four with the conclusion for Atlantis Attacks. I'd have the beginning of this, I'd have the end, I have a few in the middle, and then she'll have it all, and I'll be able to sit down and read that. And then moving on, we have more Avengers related stuff. Captain America, this is After the Storm. So I talked about Operation Galactic Storm and how much I liked that. It's not the epilogue of the story, but it's the epilogue for Cap from that story. And if you read that, I don't know if I want to do spoilers on it, even though it's an old comic. It's pretty heavy for Cap and the fallout of it. So this is going to be interesting to see how Steve Rogers handles the fallout from that. So this is issue 401. And then we have some Acts of Vengeance crossovers with Captain America. So we have Submariner happening at 365. Not sure who this guy is. It's something to do with control. Is he the controller? I don't know. 366. And then Avengers West Coast. And this is an Infinity Crusade crossover. So this is 97. We got Hawkeye, War Machine, and Mockingbird on the cover. And then 98. Something's happened with the U.S. Agent. And then we have, as we're getting close to the milestone for Avengers, their 30th anniversary, they had a lot of these, the chrome foil, these pop-out covers. So this is number 363. We see Black Knight and Cap going at it. This one is, it should look a little different with the coloring. Now, the last one was kind of a silver. This one's kind of a gold, or at least supposed to look kind of goldish. This is 366. Looks like we have Hercules, Widow, Circe, Crystal, and Knight. Retribution, it says at the bottom. And then 369, this is part of the Blood Ties, which is kind of the sequel story to Fatal Attractions. So the fallout from everything happened with Magneto, and so it mainly involves with Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver and Exodus and the X-Men and the Avengers dealing with that. So this is Blood Ties Part 505, the final chapter of that crossover. And then the last few comics that I bought here are Avengers related, but these are Avengers after the return. So if you are an Avengers fan, if you're a comics 90s fan, in X-Men we had the story of Professor X becoming Onslaught, and when he does that, he kind of causes a lot of disturbances in the Marvel reality, and so there was a chance for Marvel to go through and do like a few issues, not a few issues, I don't know, maybe it was a year of just a reset of the core Avengers type characters: Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, the Avengers themselves, and I think even Fantastic Four, just pretty much people who are big but not the X-Men or Spider-Man, just giving them a chance to reset. And they brought in Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld to do that. And then after that, I believe they ended that storyline with Franklin Richards, the son of the Fantastic Four, and he was able to go through and fix the reality and kind of bring everything back. So we had the Heroes Reborn and Heroes Return. So this is the Avengers post that, with Kurt Busiek as the writer. So this is number 2, number 3, number 4, and this one actually has a really cool poster that came inside by George Perez. So I'm going to post a picture of that up here. So you can see that. So if you ever find Avengers number 4, just know you're going to get a really cool George Perez poster, which is, even more special now that he's passed. It's nice to have those kinds of things so you can just remember these great people who worked on some great books. Number 5, with the quote-unquote Justice League. Number 6. Number 7. And then we're getting back to the Kree. And then I found a Kang comic. So this is the Avengers, the Heroic Age. Now, I tend to stick more towards much earlier comics, but whenever there's a Kang, I'm going to grab it anyways. And it looks like the Avengers Heroic Age storyline might feature Kang pretty heavily, so I might have to get that whole run to collect that. So good to get a Kang cover. This was a great stop. Again, this was at Toy Headquarters, is the name of the store if you're looking for it in person or on Google Maps. But actually, I found out because all over their comics and all over their stuff were stickers that said Toy Vomit. That is their actual name as a store. And apparently they have a really big Instagram presence under Toy Vomit, and they kind of made their name that way. But as an actual store, they couldn't put Toy Vomit out on the storefront. People just weren't happy about them doing that, so they decided to go with Toy Headquarters for the name of their physical location. But as far as what they consider themselves to be and how they refer to themselves, and especially with their social media presence outside of Facebook, you can find them on Facebook as Toy HQ. But as far as their Instagram presence and internally, they're Toy Vomit, because it's the way they explained it was like just toys exploded everywhere. It's like vomit erupting from your mouth. Might not be the best thing to be thinking about, but just imagine being surrounded by just an overflow of toys. And the store, I wouldn't say the store felt like Toy Vomit, because it was very organized. It was very clean. They had lots of cool stuff, and it was a great stop. So, the toys were great price. They just didn't have what I was looking for when I was there, but the comics were great prices too. Things were $2 to $3, maybe $4. The Masters of the Universe comics were the highest priced ones, but it was a great stop, and it was my final stop on my comic book road trip. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick run of videos. These were like almost back to back to back, maybe a day break somewhere. But I think moving on, I tend to go to my local comic shop every week, and then sometimes I'll do some online orders. So I think I'm going to continue this series just to kind of be like a quick recap of what I'm finding at my local comic shop. And then if I do go to other places, I want you to juice those as well. But in the next episode, I look forward to introducing you to the comic shop that I go to. All right. See you next time.